Welcome back to State of the Nation. Earlier this week, this programme visited an hotel in North Somerset suspected of housing asylum seekers. This is what we found. We are heading to the Winford Manor Hotel, which isn't quite in Winford. It really is the middle of nowhere. These are some of the smallest lanes around this part of Somerset. We're not that far from Bristol, but we are really hidden away. The next door village is Nempnett-Thrubwell, which is a gloriously small and beautifully named village. So we'll see if there is anything at the Winford Manor Hotel. It's hard to believe that they could be putting illegal migrants here, away from any facilities, but I suppose away from the people, hidden from people who may not be so keen on the idea of migrant hotels. There is the Winford Manor Hotel, and there is security. Oh, it's very interesting. I mean, here we are. We are in the middle of nowhere. Winford Manor Hotel. There's a big padlock on it. There's a bar and a security fence. And it's all very strange what's going on here. Hello? Hello, sir? They don't want to talk to us. Hiding away in a little sentry box. He's taking his coat off inside it. And it's just very odd. There aren't places like this in Somerset. That there just aren't places that are locked away behind heavy padlocks of this kind. Even private houses that have quite well-known people in them are more open than this. But let's walk round and see if we can see anything from any other angle. And you see, this just gives you an idea of how out of the way we are, but yet central. So Ridge Hill has virtually nobody living in it. Nempnett is a tiny village, very pretty, wonderful views. Chew Magna is a bit bigger, was in my former constituency. If you look here, it's Lulsgate, and Lulsgate means Bristol Airport. And so you're 1.5 miles from Bristol Airport, but you are actually really in the middle of nowhere at the same time. And it seems perhaps a good place to hide illegal migrants in. But let's see if we can see any more by walking around. Can we see anything through here? There doesn't seem to be very many people about. Hello? Is this an illegal migrant place? He looks as if he works here. No one we've seen looks like somebody who's come over on a boat. No, how one would tell, but they've got security or they've got lanyards. It's like some James Bond demon thing. So here we are in the middle of nowhere in Somerset, hidden away at the Winford Manor Hotel. And lo and behold, there's lots of security who don't want to talk to us. And we've noticed some don't drop litter signs in English, in French, but also in Persian and Vietnamese. What can be going on here? Do you think all this way from Dover, 200 miles from the Channel, we've got illegal migrants here that the government's too ashamed to admit to? Well, we repeatedly tried to verify the use of the hotel with the Home Office, local councils and the agency provider. None has confirmed or denied the hotel's use, though the Home Office has given the following statement. Since taking office, we have taken immediate action to fix the asylum system and have started closing down hotels and returning more than 35,000 people with no right to be here. From over 400 asylum hotels opened in summer 2023, costing almost £9 million a day, there are now less than, it ought to be fewer than, the Home Office ought to learn better grammar, never mind, 210, and we want them all closed by the end of this Parliament. The security of the local communities within which hotels are located will always be our paramount concern. I also made efforts to speak to people inside the hotel grounds and made it clear we were filming. We used a long lens camera to capture visual evidence suggesting this was an asylum hotel which showed multilingual signage, visible security and avoidance of media engagement to protect privacy, we have blurred faces and not shown neighbouring properties, which interestingly seems to have been provided with secure entry systems, which has to be said are unusual in this part of the world. This is very much in the public interest. The public deserve to know who is living in their communities. These hotels are appearing in remote locations all over the country, and the authorities' unwillingness to be transparent about them means that it's left to us to do so. Well, I'm joined now by a former Labour advisor, Paul Richards. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. Why is the Home Office so coy about where these hotels are? Don't people have a right to know who is coming into their community?
Well, keeping the locations of these places confidential is a government policy that was pursued by the previous government. They introduced the hotels in the first place, and this government too. And I think it's pretty obvious why, isn't it, Jacob? It's because if they were widely known, there are agitators who would want to stir up trouble and cause perhaps violence and maybe even try and set fire to these hotels, and would have a major public order issue. So, I mean, I think most communities know that there are these hotels in their communities, but not publishing their names online and drawing attention to them nationally, I think is the right approach from a public order point of view.
Doesn't it actually have the opposite effect, that if you hide them away, then it makes it of interest to people like me to go and find them, that you create an interest because you're not trusting people, and therefore there is a suspicion of what's going on and of where these hotels are. And actually, openness, sunlight, is the great disinfectant, and people would be reassured if they knew where things were.
Well, the government is trying to close these hotels down, and there is a certain fluidity now where they are closing down at a fast rate. And I think one of the problems is that there's a lot of online misinformation. I read something the other day with a list of hotels, including in my own town, which was just simply not true. There were not anybody, no migrants being housed in these particular hotels being named. So I think it's best that we just, keep it confidential, keep it on the lowdown, because otherwise we're going to have demonstrations, we're going to have attacks, we're going to have all kinds of people, and we do know, don't we, there are people out there who seek to stir up trouble, and there are agents provocateurs and rabble rousers and so on. And I just think it would be foolish to have a sort of Home Office list published online that would create a focal point, Paul, until such time at the end of the Parliament when these hotels will be closed, which I think we can all agree is the right policy now.
We'll wait and see about that, because actually there seems to be no success in getting the numbers down, record numbers over the last year. But
hang on, the hotel, there's only about 200 now, and there's 400 a few months ago. So actually the numbers are going down.
But not of the numbers of people coming in. More people are coming in.
But the hotels are
coming in vast numbers.
But, sure. But my point is that
they may simply be going into larger hotels, because this hotel, this rather lovely hotel set in 7.5 acres, only has a little over 30 rooms. I mean, it is not, you would have thought, exactly the place to put very large numbers of migrants, because it's quite a small niche hotel. But aren't you making an argument for complete government secrecy on almost everything? And aren't people allowed to protest? Isn't that part of freedom of speech, that you're allowed to say, I don't approve of this policy being implemented in my community? And I was really interested to see the neighbouring houses had intercoms and electric gates, which in Somerset is not unprecedented. I confess I have electric gates myself, but they're pretty unusual, particularly in out-of-the-way places. So there's clearly a fear about the security of these places, and therefore of the people who are in them, as was seen in the Bell Hotel.
Well, my understanding, I mean, just from Googling, I have to say that the hotel is owned by a chain, a well-known hotel chain, and they've obviously got a deal with the Home Office. So that's why this particular facility is being used alongside other hotels in the same family. I personally have said on GB News before that I don't think these big hotel chains should be profiteering from this particular arrangement. I think it was a terribly bad deal that was struck by the previous government to open up all these hotels. But we've got them, and while we have them, I think they need to be maintained. And, we don't want the kind of rioting that we saw earlier in the year, and we don't want them to become flashpoints. And that's why they have to be closed down in an orderly way so that we don't have any hotels housing migrants at all by the end of the Parliament. That was a Labour Party manifesto pledge, by the way. So it's something that ministers take very seriously and are acting upon. And there are around 200 now. There are about 400 at the peak. So, it is going in the right direction, but we just don't want the kind of difficulty that we saw in some places over the summer.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Paul. I'm joined now by the businessman and former Reform candidate for the West of England Combined Mayoral Authority, Aaron Banks. Aaron, thank you very much
for Jacob, and thanks,
joining me.
Thank you for the invitation to your home in this wonderful part of Somerset.
Well, it's a great part of Somerset, and would have been in your mayoralty had you won, and had the Conservatives and Reform all voted for the same party, you would have won, or the Conservative would have won. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. It's this issue of keeping things secret and the public's right to know. And Paul's a highly intelligent man, but I thought what he was saying basically was you can't trust people because they might burn the hotels down. But I don't think that's what people want to do. They just feel they should be trusted.
I mean, I think it's a crazy argument, first of all, and I think one of the... I never really saw you as an investigative journalist, but obviously you've found a new calling in life, doorstepping hotels. But it's quite remarkable, isn't it? A beautiful little country hotel is being used to house migrants, and I think one of the big issues around these boats and illegal immigration is the kind of pull factor, where you've got people in France in tented camps and they're coming across the channel and being put in nice hotels, being given mobile phones, benefits, and we can't solve everybody's problems. I'm afraid that's the bottom line.
Well, we had a word with some people in Mid-Somerset Norton earlier on today.
And they made their views pretty
and they made their views pretty clear.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we don't get put in hotels.
Yeah.
And the hotel we went to see is a really nice one. And what's also interesting is that when you talk to people about immigration, particularly if you're coming from this part of the world and your part of the world, they say, well, surely it doesn't affect people in your area. Why are they worried? And this just shows that it's nationwide. It's not just...
Well, I think it's actually, in one way, you probably would disagree with me, a good thing, because there's whole communities across the north that have had their whole way of life, changed by wholesale immigration. And, I wandered around the village today, and what a beautiful part of the country. And it seems incredible that the government or the Home Office would put illegal immigrants in a beautiful hotel in Somerset.
And Reform had a big announcement yesterday about how it would deal with this. How quickly, realistically, could the hotels be closed and the camps be open?
It's a matter of will, isn't it? I mean, during COVID, Nightingale hospitals were put up post-haste, very rapidly. I'm not sure it's quite party policy, but a chap came up to me at a party the other day and said, look, I was in the army in the 1950s in the national service in camps with Nissen huts with one heater in the corner and quite bleak conditions. Why can't we set up detention camps where we keep people in a similar way? And I see no reason why that couldn't be done extremely quickly if the will's there to do it.
And the numbers, because there are tens of thousands of people coming every year at the moment. Can you get those sorts of numbers into camps?
But why couldn't you?
Enough?
I mean, that's the question. For the army to throw up a sort of camp like that would be relatively easy to do, I think. You might have to have a number of them. But you've got to stop the pull factor. If people are coming across and it's seen that they're getting better treatment than our own citizens, well, of course they're going to keep coming in ever increasing numbers.
And that once they're here, they seem to stay, that once they get here, and part of what Labour's been saying is they will increase the processing, but increasing the processing just means more and more people get the right to stay.
Which is what they're planning, obviously, to do, isn't it? It's not a policy, it's just converting them from illegal immigrants to legal immigrants.
And part of the programme would be to withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, Labour's pointed out that Belarus and Russia have done that. Yeah. Does the company you might be keeping worry you at all?
Well, I don't really care what Belarus and Russia do. I care about what the UK does. And I think, we need a tough approach to this now. It's clear that immigration, or economic immigration, if you like, is growing in the world, and we have to defend our borders. And the countries that don't do that are going to get swamped. I mean, I saw in the paper today there was a lot of outcry about sending people back to Afghanistan or the Taliban, and then it turns out Germany's doing the same sort of deal. I think we're going to have to be hard-headed about this and look after our own interests first.
But it will be quite a fight, because the whole of the British establishment will be opposed to you. The House of Lords has a majority against repealing the Human Rights Act. The judges have loved the increase in judicial power that they've had.
So I take that point exactly, and it's one of the things that I did an interview actually for the Law Gazette, a rather obscure publication. But my point was we almost need a great reform bill, or a big beautiful reform bill that tackles the kind of structural issues in the British establishment right at the very beginning of a reform government. And that means almost a factory reset of the whole process, from the civil service to, the legal system to various other things. If you think really for the last, let's call it 20 years, the British people have voted for lower immigration. I mean, particularly your party promised tens of thousands and delivered millions every year. And very much it's been the legal system that's defeated, the best interests of actual government. So I think we need to get to a position where we come into government having thought this through and be ready to go on day one.
But one of the problems Boris Johnson found when COVID struck was that he pulled what he thought that were the levers of power, and the levers weren't connected to anything. Things didn't happen. Donald Trump had executive orders. What is it that reform knows or could use that would make things happen?
It's an interesting point, Jake, because if you look at Trump in his first administration, he came in and obviously didn't realise how it worked to a degree and got hammered. Second time round, he's actually better prepared for what needs to happen. But I think it's if you talk about a great reform bill, it's eliminating this legislation that is causing the issue, and doing it right at the very beginning.
And how quickly do you think you can?
I think what you have to do is start working on this a couple of years before coming into government. If the way things are going in the polls, it's conceivable there will be a reform government or some sort of coalition. And I think you've got to be ready on day one to change the actual system. So civil service is a good example.
So your motto is Trump 2, not Trump 1.
That's
Aaron,
exactly right.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Jacob.